Hello and welcome to the EVCOM Clarion Awards 2021 for our second ever virtual awards ceremony in partnership with DRPG and sponsored by Cvent and 5283. My name is Kate Sturgis and I have the lovely job of announcing our winners today and hosting the ceremony. Joining me today is EVCOM's own Executive Director, Claire Fenlow, who will be speaking to industry leaders at points throughout the ceremony on subjects including trends in the sector, diversity and inclusion and sustainability.
Hello everybody, and thank you for that introduction, Kate. We're so glad that you're joining us as today's host. And thank you to you, our audience, who are joining us virtually from home. We're really looking forward to celebrating the best cause-driven creativity with you across the corporate, live and film sectors. Our panel of esteemed judges, who I'd like to thank personally for their time and experience, all agreed on the impressive quality of the work this year. It is a testament to the sector and to the many brilliant people who work within it that even in the face of a pandemic, so much brilliant and varied work has been created. I'd also like to personally thank our sponsors, DRPG, Cvent and 5283, without whom the ceremony would not be possible. We're incredibly grateful for your continued support of this vital award scheme. We're going to be joined by a series of guests today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their thoughts. But first, I'd like to welcome EVCOM's board chair, Charlotte Gentry, to say a few words on behalf of the board. So Charlotte, hello.
Hi Claire, thank you very much for having me on the show today. I am very, very lucky to have been the chair for EVCOM for 2 years in a row now, and it's been an incredible experience and wonderful to have met so many esteemed and incredible industry leaders in the process, and so many creative individuals as well. As we all know, the industry has been completely transformed over the last 15 to 18 months. There's been a lot of collaboration. There's been a lot of amalgamation of supply base. And there have been a lot of people that have found the climate tricky, but there's been a lot of need to adapt and evolve during this time. So that's meant there's been a huge amount of creativity within the sector. And it's been all important for associations such as EVCOM to really come out shining during this period of time, because they've really enabled the industry to come together, and they've created that platform to be able to network, to share content, and to do some really incredible things, and to evolve and adapt themselves over this period. So associations like EVCOM have been, I think, pivotal during this time to enable people to really discuss their challenges and to share also their creative insights and the trends that they're seeing during this period of time. So I feel very, very fortunate actually to be a part of an association like EVCOM during this time, because it's been really interesting, very insightful, and I hope that I've been able to add value to Claire and her team during this, what might have been otherwise a testing time.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Into the main event, we would love to see where our virtual guests are celebrating. So please do send us over a selfie or group picture of you celebrating via selfie@drpgroup.com. That's selfie@drpgroup.com. There's also a chat function, so if you can wish each other luck, congratulate the winners and add your comments to the thought leadership conversations we're going to be having. We also encourage you to engage with us via our social media platforms using our Instagram @EVCOM UK and our Twitter @EVCOM Awards. So I'd like to begin by welcoming Steve Garvey, the founder of Moving Image. Now, Steve is a former comms director, top 20 agency head and former EVCOM chairman and CEO. He has more than 30 years experience in film and video. He set up Moving Image to fill the information gap in brand video and corporate film. And in 2020, he produced the Brand Film Report, the first of its kind in 15 years, which provides in-depth information and data about the corporate and brand film sector. And he's going to be speaking to Claire about the trends he noticed in this year's entries to open the ceremony.
Thank you, Kate. Hi, Steve. Lovely to have you here with us today for our second Clarion's virtual ceremony. Who'd have thought we'd have had two? So just to get us going, just to ask, what was your overall impression of the films submitted this year?
I mean, once again, it was a real privilege to be able to sit through all the films. I love watching loads and loads of these films, by the way. And the quality, I think, was extremely high. I thought perhaps we'd see, some real impact of the pandemic and a drop in quality, but I don't think that was evident at all. I think one of the other things about this sector is that it means that this is a competition where large and small can compete on a very level playing field. So huge global brands up against tiny charities judged the same way. Budget doesn't really come into it in quite that way. I think also, having looked through all the films, I think it's one of the great examples of how this sector lets the content breathe. So if you look at the average duration, we crunched the numbers on all the entries, and it comes out at 2 minutes 31 seconds, right from 5 seconds up to 19 minutes. If you then look at that benchmark, which we've also done the crunching the numbers of, and the benchmark for brands on in the UK on LinkedIn is about 61 seconds, so just over a minute.
So short.
And in Instagram, it's about 41 seconds. So you can see here that we're talking about films which on average are 2.5 times as long as the average video on LinkedIn by a brand. And that really shows through. And the reason they're that long is because they're that good, so they can be.
Yeah, we've got lots to say. I did notice, though, in the entries that there were a lot of COVID-19 films. I mean, it's what everybody talks about.
Yeah, I think it was hardly a shock. I mean, there are, I guess, 3 types there. There's one which is films which are specifically about the pandemic.
Yeah.
So for example, you've got a series of films which were entered which were to recruit nurses into the NHS. At the peak of the first wave. Then secondly, you've got films about a different theme, but that theme has been hugely impacted by the pandemic. So a film like Frontline for the NSPCC would be an example of that, a fundraiser for child protection, but where child protection gets a whole different dimension with everyone in lockdown at home.
Yeah.
And then finally, you've got the films where the theme isn't really anything about COVID at all, but the production was disrupted. So a good example of that would be the Coalition Against Gambling Ads, which was shot under the first stage after lockdown release, but still with safe shooting in place.
Yeah, so presumably film companies and filmmakers had to get very creative just to get films made, just to get them out there.
Absolutely, and I think you can see a few stages in that happening really over time when you look back now over the past year or so. I mean, first of all, there was pretty much radio silence for at least a couple of weeks while everybody tried to work out what to do after the first lockdown in late March. But then you start to get content coming through which is just whatever you can get your hands on or whatever you can create. So that's Zoom or team video or Skype that's been shot straightforwardly from people's home. You've got user-generated content, you've got intercuts with archive and stock shot material. And the quality of that is not necessarily very high, but the authenticity is just through the roof because you're looking into people's living rooms as they try and work out what on earth to do. Yeah. So that was the first wave. After a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, you start to see a different kind of content type coming through. Those are getting more polished and sophisticated. So you've got a blend of live and online video being made into a live online video event, but also a lot of animation, and we saw that particularly in the entry field here for the Clarions, where there's quite a lot of animation, more than we would normally expect, because of course animation is not disrupted. So a good example of that might be the film for the National Deaf Children's Society, for example, which was the Ninja film. I think also you also see around that time people almost trying to recreate the authenticity of the first wave, and they start to sort of create sort of fake online video platforms and dramas. Things that look a bit like YouTube but aren't YouTube or something similar. I think that's quite a difficult form to get right because the audience is by now so familiar with the real thing that actually trying to turn it into a drama is really hard.
And then, of course, we got into the third stage, which was where there was filming, but under restrictions.
That's right. I mean, you had safe shooting starts to come in. And then we saw, there are 3 very good examples of this particular genre, which were entries into the Clarions, although I saw many other examples as well around the time. And this is where you use a spoken word poet. And spoken word poets, are great because they're perfect for safe shooting. And kind of distance shooting, but they can also really pack a punch. So, for example, we saw films coming in to the Clarions from the Royal British Legion, we saw Unilever, we saw we saw 3 or 4 others coming in too, and they all, you know, they all sort of bring something different which we haven't seen, and somehow seems more real because of the recent past of the pandemic. And maybe we can look at a couple of the films now that we've been talking about. So we're going to start with that Royal British Legion film
We'll
called
look at 2,
Home.
aren't we?
Yeah. So Home was actually the second time that film had been used by the Royal British Legion. It worked the first time around. They did the second one, but it was disrupted by the pandemic, but it was well suited to that form, so that survived. And then the second one is a film called AMR Is Now, which was produced by the FAIR Initiative for 3 Angry Men. And I think that's a really strong piece of work because it was shot during lockdown, it was produced during lockdown in a very short time frame. And what the producers did here was to really work on the soundtrack. So visually we've got Stock Shots Archive graphics, but this is a really deep, well-worked soundtrack produced at very short notice indeed. So perhaps we could see those too.
Yeah, we'll have a look at the films now, please.
We need to wake up to see how war hits home. You can't rest in your bed with the world on its head. Instead, get ready for World War II. Forget all the things that you plan to do, routine stripped away like a duvet. New fears creep into your day, and when you open your eyes, nothing is the same. It's wartime. You might have to fight. For how long, you don't know. Just look around, drink it in. Last cup of tea from your favourite mug. Last pint in your local pub, last hug with mum. The cupboards grow empty, but her belly is full of worry. A war's on, so you go. Or you might have to stay, but home isn't safe. You shut out any flicker of light, hope bombs don't crush you in the middle of the night. What's that sound? Next door, they just found out he won't be coming home. What news next? Whatever it is, you have to go on. When you get back, if you get back, there are cracks behind your joy. The baby you once held is now a big boy. Things aren't what they were before. And after war, home means so much more. But now, we hold the door open to peace. Let's remember, please.
So 2 fantastic films there as examples, but outside of COVID, there were a whole load of other issues that were raised as well. I mean, it wasn't the only thing, so there was a lot else to look at.
Yeah, there was a lot else to look at, and these are themes which we've seen recurring over the years with Clarion entries. There were some differences this year as well. So the one I'd mention first will be Black Lives Matter. And with BLM, it was probably fair to say that the whole concept of BLM, not inclusion, but BLM specifically, I mean here, was probably in some ways quite marginal for many corporate narratives until last year.
Yeah.
And then everything changed, it went completely mainstream. So we saw big brands entering, for example, Deloitte, HSBC, really focusing specifically on that one issue. We saw a lot on gender equality as well, again following on from the Me Too hashtag and so on. With that one that particularly stood out, I think, for me personally, was by the National Galleries of Scotland, a very educational film about why there are so few great recognised female
An
artists.
example of a very long film.
A very long film,
Yeah.
but which works because the content's really good and really
interesting.
revealing
Yeah,
to me
yeah.
anyway, personally. On top of that, you had quite a lot about sustainability. I think that it's fair to say that Unilever have become one of the really big investors in that whole message, very, very successfully. If you look at their social media performance, most of that's being made by Plastic Pictures, who have become very sort of close to them, and also by brands by Estee Lauder, who made a really high-quality, broadcast-quality documentary, which was entered here as well. Again, much longer form. Also mental health, often connected with COVID. So, for example, the Jewish Care film by Inspired Films could probably fall into that category. And broader types of inclusion beyond the BLM one, such as disability inclusion. So, a very nice film commissioned by Volvo with a Paralympic swimmer. In that one. So, I mean, a lot to work with, and I have to say that when you sit down and watch them all one after the other, it can become a little bit overwhelming because there's so much wrong with the world that needs to be put right. So I think it's really important that we look at the positive on this, and particularly we finish with the positive. So I thought we could finish by seeing a film called Sisters in Strength. And this was made by Studio Giggle, but it was made in collaboration with a charity called Account 3, who are based in London. And what they did was they had a leadership course for BAME women, and many of those were survivors of domestic abuse. And part of the course was to make this film, which was then facilitated by Studio Giggle with a strong creative team coming out of that. So it's a piece of animation which we're going to see next. And I think one of the great things about this, and so appropriate for the Clarions, is that it is actually not about people, but it is by the people who are telling this story, who know this story from the inside. So perhaps we can finish with that.
Yeah, and lovely thing on collaboration there as well, yes. So if we could go to the film, that'd be great, thank you.
He was the nicest, most considerate guy I had ever met, but things began to change. He started to control everything. I was told how to behave, how to speak, who I could speak to, and what I could wear. I even lost control over my finances. I didn't feel safe anywhere, and it felt impossible to tell anyone about my situation. He raped me, hit me, and tried to kill me. I felt so trapped, imprisoned, helpless. I was alone and in pain and needed help. I just wanted to be free and feel empowered again. I reached out for help, and the refuge had a room ready for me and my children. I've never looked back since. 1 woman in 4 in the UK will experience domestic abuse at some point in her lifetime. Financial abuse occurs in 99% of domestic violence cases. 20% of women experience sexual assault since age 16. Domestic abuse can happen to anyone. It's never your fault.
So a really interesting project to end this segment on. So I'd like to thank you, Steve, very much for your great insights into this year's submissions, and thank you for taking part.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you. Back over to Kate now, please.
Really fascinating discussion there, and a really great way to start our ceremony. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first award of the afternoon, and this award recognises social welfare work, which encourages social awareness, raising social issues to the vital prominence they deserve. The shortlisted entries are as follows: Black Lives Matter for HSBC by Media Zoo, Freedom from Loneliness for Jewish Care by Inspired Films, Frontline for NSPCC by Three Angry Men Productions, Launch Film for Coalition Against Gambling Ads by Pucker Films, Mark, COVID-19 DRTV Appeal for British Red Cross by Raw London, Sisters in Strength for Account 3 by Studio Giggle, Trust Conference 2020 for Thomas Reuters Foundation by Broadsword Event House, and We Did Everything for Working Options by Media Zoo. Now, in this category, we have one of only 3 highly commended awards, and here it goes to Sisters in Strength for Accounts 3 by Studio Giggle. The Bronze Award has been awarded to 2 films. They are Mark, COVID-19 DRTV Appeal for British Red Cross by Raw London, and We Did Everything for Working Options by Media Zoo. The Silver Award goes to Black Lives Matter for HSBC by Media Zoo. And winning the Gold Award is a film which received high praise from the judges. We need more content like this, said one. Powerful and accessible, said another. So this award goes to Launch Film for Coalition Against Gambling Ads by Pucker Films. Congratulations.
Is your dad in?
He's on the phone. You're...
Did you see the game then?
Yeah, I watch every game. You scored a blinder.
You bet I did. Who's your favourite player then? What do you reckon the chances are I could do it again next week?
Easy. You're the best striker in the league.
Yeah, you can bet on it. In fact, you should. How much pocket money do you get?
A £5 a week.
Is that all? Never mind. If you bet on me scoring in the first half next week, you can turn it into £50. What do you think? Do you think I've got it in me?
Of course, but I only get pocket money on Sundays.
I could ask for an advance. Or maybe you could just borrow it. It makes it so much more exciting.
My mum keeps changing the jar in the kitchen. Wait a minute. There's got to be £5 there.
Oh, man. I'll see you next week with your £50.
Wait, but what happens if you don't score?
Well, then I won't come back. But that's not likely to happen, is it? See ya. Who was that?
You'll never guess, Dad. It was Rich Turpin.
Come on, son, don't be daft.
Look for yourself.
What did he want? Your dad in?
By allowing gambling companies to sponsor our teams, we're giving them a route into our kids' hearts. We've got to kick gambling advertising out of football. Gambling destroys lives. Support the Coalition Against Gambling Ads. Don't make a hero out of gambling.
The next award recognises work that centres around health and well-being, raising awareness of medical issues, mental and physical, to promote health and general well-being. The shortlisted entries are AMR Is Now for Fair Initiative by Three Angry Men Productions, Connect With Your Heart for Have Us Just by Plastic Pictures, Future Foods for Unilever by Plastic Pictures, I Am Terry for Aqua Running by TBD Media Group, the Travel to Tokyo Challenge for BOA and BPA by Everfi, Using Echo in pH Detection Animation for Janssen by NextGen Healthcare Communications, What One Thing, Rare Disease Day 2021 for the Bedrock Group by Inspired Film, and World Mental Health Day 2020 for Unilever by Plastic Pictures. Now, the judges opted to award their second highly commended award in this category in acknowledgement of an incredibly powerful and moving film, I Am Terry for Aqua Running by TBD Media Group. The Bronze Award goes to Using Echo in pH Detection Animation for Janssen by Next Gen Healthcare Communications. The Silver Award goes to the Travel to Tokyo Challenge for BOA and BPA for Everfi. And the Gold Award goes to a film which one judge described as truly shocking and incredible result, and another praised for its impact and originality. The winner is AMR Is Now for Fair Initiative by 3 Angry Men Productions. Our next award is for work that successfully and dynamically raises awareness of the current environmental issues affecting our planet. The shortlisted entries for this category are Be Mighty Recycle for Ap Cymru by Radley Eldar, Climate Week NYC 2020 for The Climate Group by Raw London, Meta for Unilever by Plastic Pictures, Open Water for Volvo by Tinderflint, Media Blaze and CAA, There Is No Finish Line for Unilever by Plastic Pictures, and Tusk Conservation Awards 2020 by Shelton Fleming Associates. Sustainability is a core tenet of these awards, and someone who has worked consistently with EVCOM over the years to ensure the sustainability of the ceremony is Sam Wilson, founder and managing director of Cintero Associates. And we are delighted that she's able to be here virtually today, along with DRPG CEO Dale Parmenter, to discuss how the industry as a whole can work towards a more sustainable future. Claire, over to you.
Kate, it's lovely to be here with both Sam Wilson on screen and Dale Parmenter in person to discuss sustainability and especially how the events sector can ensure that it remains at the forefront of our industry. So, over to you, Sam, first of all. What would you say were the key 2021 trends for sustainability for the creative industry?
Hello, Claire. Lovely to be with you, and hello to everyone tuning in today. I love the Clarions. It's very close to my heart. And can I just say, it never ceases to amaze me the level of quality of awards, of the award entries that are coming in, and how powerful we are as creative communicators to mobilise and amplify positive change. Just carry on that great work. It's brilliant. Okay, so trends. Well, we've got to talk about climate change here, climate crisis, let's say. We've got to talk about carbon. So the next United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP26, that's Conference of Parties 26, takes place in Glasgow in November this year. So this is a really big year for us, Claire. And the key objective, of course, is to stabilise those greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere at a level that's going to prevent climate catastrophe. So this is where targets are set, including the one set at COP21. You might know it as the Paris Agreement, where 191 parties, including the UK, have formally agreed to keep global temperature increase to well below 2 degrees Celsius and ideally not above 1.5 degrees. And these are what's known as science-based targets. So what I'm seeing again and again in the creative industry is companies wanting to find out how they can support this. What do they need to do to meet their science-based targets. So that involves scoping a carbon footprint baseline, seeing what the world below 2 and 1.5 degrees Celsius looks like for their company, and evaluating how they can meet those targets by 2030. Many of the brands now are asking for evidence of this at point of tender. So there's another reason to find out what you can do in your organisation. And this is really important, Claire, because when we're talking about net zero, and that's the other hotspot that everyone's talking about at the moment, it's absolutely essential to reduce before you offset. So all this talk about net zero is great, but make sure you've got a founded science-based reductions plan in place as well. And I think, you know, we're talking about industry-wide collaborations. We've got Ad Net Zero for the Advertising Association. We've got Isla looking at events. We've got Albert looking at screen, all supporting net zero from an industry-wide perspective. And finally, the other trend, well, it should not be a surprise to anyone, certifications. These are always on trend, Claire, but I think even more so now as they demonstrate impartial and independent verification of performance to all stakeholders, including, of course, clients.
Yeah. On certifications, though, Sam, there are a lot of them out there, all with numbers. How can people choose wisely for their business? I think they just need nice names. That would be a start. But how do they choose where to go?
Oh yeah, let's petition. I think that's probably why B Corp is gaining more traction than ISO 4001 or ISO 2012.
Things off the tongue, doesn't it?
They all work together, in fact, though, Claire. And I've, funnily enough, I've just written a piece called The Certification Conundrum for M&IT, and I sent it over to the amazing Amelia, who does all that great work behind the scenes at EVCOM, to put it on the EVCOM blog. And what that does is go through the key global certifications and identifies the pros and cons of each. So I'd advise anyone who's stuck in that maze of what on earth do I do to go first to that blog, have a look through, and don't be frightened of picking up the phone to me, to somebody else who works in this field, and asking them what they think. We're always happy to help. We're a good bunch. We're always happy to help.
And one of the great things, I think, when you mentioned Ad Net Zero and Isla and Albert, everybody is working together, which I think has been accelerated by the last 16 months, where they might have been perceived to be slightly in competition with each other. They're now working together.
Absolutely. And in fact, I was on a stroll with Anna from Isla yesterday. We both live in Brighton, and we went to Preston Park and we had a stroll, and we talked more about how we can collaborate together as two women owning their small businesses in this area of work. So yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely key. Collaboration over competition has to be that way. A quick note on B Corp, actually, because I think that's gaining a huge amount of traction. We helped Havas London to get B Corp certification, gosh, it must have been 3.5 years ago now. And since then, I've seen this avalanche of interest in B Corp certification. So to become a B Corp, you are essentially becoming a business that meets the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance. So both areas under the sustainability curve. And it's about public transparency, it's about legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. And I think, that's the thing I'm really seeing. So helping people to gain that status as a B Corp, either alone or as part of an ISO system.
Right, great, thank you. And we'll go over to Dale now, because we will touch on that with Dale as well. But Dale, I know you've worked with Sam and her team for a long time, and DRPG was the first agency in the UK to achieve the ISO 2012-1, another number, and ISO 14001 as an integrated management system over 10 years ago now. So how have you used this as a vehicle to ensure that you're always improving?
It's been a great vehicle. I mean, initially it was quite complicated, and Sam helped us through it because we ended up creating so many procedures, so many processes. It was just, this is ridiculous.
Hard to stick
to. We
we
worked on the principle and worked with the accreditation body, who were incredibly helpful as well, and to through those early days of simplifying it and making it tangible. And I didn't want this to be a tick box, because so often you see on tenders or whatever, you tick the boxes and okay, we're done. I wanted actual tangible outputs from it, So we designed the system, and it's flexible enough to be able to design the system. Sam helped us a tremendous amount and still is helping us. So now we've got a very practical system that everyone understands. They understand what they need to do. We set very simple objectives for every single area of the business. And then through the sustainable management system, starts to run into the clients and then into the events themselves. So it's everything from, like today, we're running on completely renewable energy. You can just see the solar panels.
Not much being used here.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Just the sun.
So it's like, what can we practically do?
Yeah. And what would you say your next steps are, though? How do you then move on? How do you expand?
Well, I mean, what we did 15 months ago, probably 16 months ago, just before actually COVID, was launch our CSR charter. And we felt we needed to go to the next step.
Yeah.
So we linked now that charter to the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. And that's been really fantastic in terms of giving us a roadmap through. And then COVID came, so we thought, oh God, is this going to slow us up? But actually, just by thinking more creatively, we've got a big sustainability team. We've been able to achieve an awful lot over the 12 months, probably more actually, than if we hadn't had COVID, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Right from community work to equality through to environmental, and we've really pushed on. So things like waste here at the building, we're down to no landfill waste, no plastic bottles. And just a couple of weeks ago, we launched our 2021 Sustainable Review, or CSR Charter Review, which really outlined what we've been up to.
Yeah.
We were greatly honoured to have Prince Edward come along to meet us and part of that launch, and to meet the team and talk to the team of what they do, because what's really important is the team need to get involved. It's not just about the board or the managers saying you must do this. The team have to come up with the ideas, they have to generate the objectives every year and work it through. And that was a chance on that visit to speak to the team about that, and also to see, with all the new building work that we've been going on, we've got a spare piece of land, so we've created that into a biodiversity area, and the Prince planted a tree for us, everything else. So, but what
Don't let it die, will you?
No, I know. We've been out watching it today. It's been very, very warm. But the next steps really from that, which is outlined in that secondary charter, is that more education of clients. So working with Sam, working with Anna, and the rest of the industry, how do we now convince clients? Now, some are very good, but others, I've got this fallacy almost that it's going to cost money.
Yeah. No,
In actual fact, it can save money. It can be much more efficient if we create a sustainable event or a sustainable production. So that's the next piece of work. Is we've done some great steps through the management system, but let's take it further. And we're starting our B Corp journey as well.
Right, gosh,
so more accreditations.
Yes, but all go, lots going on.
Lots going on, yeah.
Look, so thank you both. It's been invaluable hearing your perspectives and what you're doing, and fantastic to see a real life example of sustainability processes at work here at DRPG, and I can actually see all the solar panels.
They're glowing.
They're
glowing. Yes.
In touching distance. Right, so with that, thank you both very much. We're going to move back on to Kate to carry on with some of the awards. So Kate, over to you.
Thank you. And so on to announcing the winners in this category. The Bronze Award goes to Open Water for Volvo by Tinderflint, Media Blaze and CAA. The judges have awarded a joint silver for 2 entries that they thought were equally impressive and award-worthy. So the silver winners are Tusk Conservation Awards 2020 by Shelton Fleming Associates and Climate Week NYC 2020, the Climate Group by Raw London. And the Gold Award. The Gold Award goes to a piece that one judge awarded full marks to. It was described by others as beautifully shot, written and performed, and gobsmacking. The winner is There Is No Finish Line for Unilever by Plastic Pictures.
Everybody says that I have my father's lips, but my mother's eyes, wide with wonder, and ready to soak in the sun, the sand, and just about everything in the land. We stop the car for sunsets, we count stars and jet set to chase views and crave new places to escape to. We always find ourselves waiting at the foot of nature to feel more alive or more human, or just take the weight off. I guess there is something about planet Earth being older and wiser that makes us as people feel safer and lighter, but I wonder what my kids will turn to escape. What kind of Earth they will face after we're done contributing to the pollution instead of solutions. I don't want to remove them from a beautiful tomorrow because better living seemed like too much effort. It's literally the difference between clean air and going breathless. It is worth all of the lessons. Plus, we're clever now. We've broken ground. We've gone past the age of novice. We are changing the world from an office. So we can and should make our future a promise to protect it from our defeats. There is no finish line in nature. The cycle just gets smarter and then repeats. So let's let what we have learned guide our mind and feet into giving our future kids more sunsets than polluted streets. If collectively we focus, if we study the things that broke us and come together to serve notice to our old ways, we're more powerful than the minority's reluctance to change. And either way, if we ingrain better living into our DNA, that trend will catch like the ripple of a wave and change the way the world behaves. It waits for us to wake to hope. And I get we're on a slippery slope and we're coming close to drowning the boat, but we can still save us before we sink. If our eyes can still blink and minds still think and tomorrow still exist, may every new morning remind us that even the darkest night can't resist the rise of a new sun. I want my future kids to see what hope can become when we all back it. This is our planet. These are our problems that we can manage once we realize that we are the butterfly's wings and we control the puppet strings, and every forever fix needs us to begin to think of the first sunset that stole our breath, or star-filled sky that had us tip our heads to God, who controlled the tide around our thighs as a child. And remember, the future deserves that same grace.
Training purpose: educating targeted audiences in the areas of health and safety, diversity, environmental initiatives and social responsibility. The shortlisted entries for the Education and Training Award are Coercive Control for Scottish Women's Rights Centre by Hee Haw, D&V for Scouts by 3 Angry Men Productions, Driving for Standard Chartered Bank by the Edge Picture Company, Ninja Phoenix and DJ and the Gloopy Glop for National Deaf Children's Society by Hee Haw, Thrive for Ørsted by Active Training Team, and Turn on the Subtitles, TOTS by Tailor Made Media. The Bronze Award goes to Thrive for Ørsted by Active Training Team. The Silver Award goes to Driving for Standard Chartered Bank by the Edge Picture Company. And the Gold Award goes to what one judge termed a charming, informative and fun animation. The winning piece is Ninja Phoenix and DJ and the Gloopy Glop for National Deaf Children's Society by Hee Haw.
Glue ear is a condition that affects 8 out of 10 children in the UK. The National Deaf Children's Society wanted to help people understand a bit more about the condition and how it can be treated.
Ninja Phoenix and DJ and the Gloopy Glop.
Early one morning, as the sun was rising over Bugland, the mountain mist was starting to clear. Deep inside the mountain was the secret base of the Deaf Ninja Team, or DNT for short. Inside the base, 3 ninjas were fast asleep. All of a sudden, "What's that?" Fred signed. Ninja Phoenix replied, "I don't know, let's check." With lightning quick speed, they grabbed their hearing aids and turned them on. Switched on and ready for action. The DNT were able to talk to each other using their radio aids. By making their bullet bikes go at the speed of light, they are at the source of the problem in no time at all. The DNT arrived at the feet of a boy called Dylan. They switched the modes on their bullet bikes and headed for Dylan's ear. Time to investigate, the team said. Fred shouted back to the other ninjas, "Look, behind the eardrum! It's the gloopy glop!" We've got to get it out of there. Dylan has glue ear. That's why he can't hear properly. So what are the options? I know, let's check with our audiologist.
So the first option is something called an autovent. It's basically a very clever balloon, like you'd have at a birthday party. We'll put it in your nose and then you blow as hard as you can until it's as big as a mango. The second option would be giving you hearing aids. That way we can see if the gloopy glop disappears by itself with time. But this time around, because you've had glue ear for a while, Dylan, we're going to try grommets. They're teeny tiny tubes, even smaller than an ant. The doctor will give you a little medicine, which will help you go to sleep, and when you wake up, it will all be done. It won't hurt one bit. Here's what you need, Fred.
Thanks, Doc. The DNT punctured the eardrum and drained away the gloopy glop. Then, carefully, the ninjas inserted the grommet. "That'll stop the gloopy glop from coming back," said Fred.
The next award is for the hotly contested category of brand communication, awarding work that promotes the brand identity of a charity or commercial company with strong CSR credentials. This category is kindly sponsored by 5283 PR, and the shortlisted brand communication entries are Afi's Story for Decky by Studio Giggle, Freedom from Loneliness for Jewish Care by Inspired Films, Home for the Royal British Legion by Tinderflint and Quebecer, Launch Film for Coalition Against Gambling Ads by Pucker Films, Lifebuoy Returns for Unilever by Plastic Pictures, Made Me for Scouts by Three Angry Men Productions, Metafilm by Unilever for Plastic Pictures, and Our Future for ABB by Media Zoo. The third and final highly commended award goes to Launch Film for Coalition Against Gambling Ads by Pucker Films. The Bronze Award goes to Lifebuoy Returns for Unilever by Plastic Pictures. The Silver Award goes to Afi's Story for Decky by Studio Giggle. And the Gold Award goes to a project described by our judges as poignant, creative and fabulous. The piece was recognised both for its strong script, impact and excellent execution. And the winner is Home for the Royal British Legion by Tinderflint and Quebecer.
We need to wake up to see how war hits home. You can't rest in your bed with the world on its head. Instead, get ready for World War II. Forget all the things that you plan to do, routine stripped away like a duvet. New fears creep into your day, and when you open your eyes, nothing is the same. It's wartime. You might have to fight. For how long, you don't know. Just look around, drink it in. Last cup of tea from your favourite mug. Last pint in your local pub, last hug with mum. The cupboards grow empty, but her belly is full of worry. A war's on, so you go. Or you might have to stay, but home isn't safe. You shut out any flicker of light, hope bombs don't crush you in the middle of the night. What's that sound? Next door, they just found out he won't be coming home. What news next? Whatever it is, you have to go on. When you get back, if you get back, there are cracks behind your joy. The baby you once held is now a big boy. Things aren't what they were before. And after war, home means so much more. But now, we hold the door open to peace. Let's remember, please.
Our next award recognises work within the vital category of diversity and inclusion, commending work that promotes tolerance, diversity and inclusion. The shortlisted diversity and inclusion entries are Black Lives Matter for HSBC by Media Zoo, Can You See Me for Deloitte by Saboteur, Dudjan for the Estee Lauder Companies by TBD Media Group, I Imagine That for Anne Frank Trust by T-Max Productions, Unstereotype for Unilever by Plastic Pictures, and Why Are There So Few Female Artists for National Galleries of Scotland by Hee Haw. Now, before I announce the winner, we are really lucky to be joined by Ashanti Bentil-Dew, founder of Diversity Ally and CEO of EventMind. Now, EventMind is a market leader in the virtual meetings and events sector, providing trusted and unbiased event technology recommendations so companies can focus on running successful online events. But in 2020, following the death of George Floyd and the realisation there wasn't an organisation taking ownership of the events industry's approach to tackling its lack of diversity and inclusion, Ashanti and Gabrielle Austin-Brown launched Diversity Ally, a consultancy service and membership organisation offering solutions to help businesses and organisations in the events, MICE and hospitality industry become more diverse and inclusive. So Claire, it's back over to you.
Thank you very much, Kate, and that's quite an introduction. And welcome, Ashanti. Delighted to have you with us here today on the glorious roof of DRPG. So we're just going to talk about a couple of issues, and I just wanted to ask, really, is if you've noticed whether there's been any significant impact that COVID-19 might have had on organisations and their diversity and inclusion programmes. I mean, has there been improvements or slippage, or what would be your assessment of where programmes have gone in the last year?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really good question. The reality is that COVID has presented some really complex challenges for most organisations, and looking after their people, of course, was really important, particularly with the transition into remote working or working from home during a crisis. And so we did see a mixed response, generally speaking, from stakeholders within organisations. You had stakeholders who had dealt with crises before, stakeholders who really had already invested in their people. So when it came to looking at diversity and inclusion and how that sits within that, they felt relatively competent to do that. We did, however, see some stakeholders who were unsure, who were worried about how to approach diversity and inclusion, particularly against the backdrop of Black Lives Matter and the kind of public and social media pressure that put on companies to either respond, not respond, open the conversation internally with their employees or not. So a very mixed response. Overall, what I would say is that the events industry in particular has responded quite well. We have seen more companies seek to use the resources that we provide in order to diversify their speaker panels, for example. And also just open up the conversation within their organisations.
Right, okay, so some positives, but
yes,
people having to deal with the complexities of their surrounding, yes. But if we look at the issue of diversity, it's the whole spectrum that we need to be looking at and considering, isn't it? There's lots of it, if you see what I mean, that needs to be explored.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I mentioned about people strategy, because essentially this is about your human resources. Holistically, and it's really important that an organisation takes a holistic approach to this. Diversity and inclusion is really about the redistribution of access, of power and resources. And so that can apply to disabled employees, that can apply to mature workers. Similarly, that can also apply to those who are neurodiverse, because that is a conversation that we see happening far more at the moment in the workplace. So it is important that companies take a broad approach. Now, of course, with Black Lives Matter, the spotlight was on race, because historically and also in terms of studies and research, talking about race is very challenging. And so we saw that human resource teams had generally decided not to talk about race for a long time. And of course, Black Lives Matter forced them to start having these conversations. So having the most difficult conversation is generally a good place to start, because once you build good skills in this area, you can tackle other areas of diversity, whether it's gender, disability, sexuality, and of course now that really important element of allowing people to show up in the workplace as themselves.
Yeah. And in a way, sometimes having a spotlight does give people an opportunity to talk about things that you know, might have been uncomfortable, as you say, and because everybody's talking about it, it gives people that opportunity.
Yes.
You did want to have a look at your wheel of power.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any? Can we get the wheel of power up? And we're going to talk around that because I'm intrigued by something that sounds like the wheel of power.
So this is a diagram that we use very often when working with clients because it so aptly depicts and shows the multiple identities that we all can occupy. We can occupy them temporarily, permanently. You may become disabled, whether it's invisible or visible at some point in the future. Or you may have a child or an elderly parent who starts to experience some of these things. And when we talk about the wheel of power, what we're really describing is that in the center of a wheel, usually, is where the power is.
Yeah.
And as we move closer to those edges, we become further disenfranchised, marginalised and distanced from where the power lies. And so within organisations, we find that individuals who might be neurodiverse, individuals who might be bigger in body size, or maybe they're multilingual and English is not their first language, we find that those individuals tend to be more marginalised within the workplace. And if you can imagine, if you occupy more than one of those identities, then of course the experience is quite layered for you. So that wheel of power is usually used to demonstrate or help people understand some of the experiences that someone might be having to grapple with and navigate in society, but also in the workplace.
It's a great visual metaphor, isn't it? Because I like the idea that people could be several things, and then the burden that you're carrying and the sort of it becomes slightly more I don't know, flimsy because you're all
at different points in life. And sometimes we can slide up and down that spectrum.
And it can come totally out of the blue, I imagine, for some people, and then you suddenly find yourself in a place that you would never have expected.
Absolutely, and that's why it is an issue for all people.
Yeah, exactly.
Because anybody could find themselves having those types of experiences.
I think that wheel of power needs to be everywhere, so we can all look at it and not forget it. So what can and should companies be doing to ensure their processes and programs are robust enough to not fall off the cliff when we come out of this situation? Because I think people's minds have been focused by Black Lives Matter and Me Too. But in a way, they've been given the opportunity to look at that over the last year. But when business ramps up again, how do they make sure they don't let it go back again?
So that's a really good question. The first thing to remember is the fact that in a time of crisis, we do tend to revert back to habit. And that's why it's important in good times to have healthy workplace culture. Because it means when something unexpected happens, we will revert back, hopefully, to those healthy habits. The two things that a company needs to be aware of mostly is two elements. One is the systematic, so the systemic issues. So when we talk about systemic, we're talking about your systems, your processes, and your policies. Those could be with regards to recruitment, talent management, appraisals, pay rises. So you look at your systems and your processes, but the really key one, important one that each of us as individuals can actually influence in a positive way is workplace culture. So on a day-to-day basis, what attitude, ideas and beliefs do we have? How healthy, appropriate and inclusive are they? And so it's about organisations providing resources, leading by example so that their employees on a day-to-day basis treat each other with more grace and kindness. Because quite often those systemic issues take some time, sometimes years, to unravel.
And I think some conversations we've been having is it's not just about your recruitment, it's about making the environment you're recruiting people into the place where they want to stay and flourish.
It's that thing that we talk about, good soil. You know, if the soil isn't good, there's no point in planting new seeds. And so what we try to encourage organisations to do, look at your existing workforce, and even if they appear to be homogenous and are relatively the same, what we often find is you dig a bit deeper. You know, just because you've got a team of 10 white males, it doesn't mean they're all happy. It doesn't mean they're all having the same experience. And what that does is highlight that companies have to take the lead when it comes to unravelling this, and then you can embrace new diversity into the business. Well,
I think there's an awful lot to think about there, and I do think that a lot of the entries this year have raised some of these issues. So I think it's great to see work being done in this field, and as Steve mentioned early on, some of those big brands really entering it, and you know, they might not always get it absolutely right. But the fact that they're investing money and time and effort is a good sign, I think.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much, Ashanti.
Thank
We
you.
shall go back to Kate and see where we are with the awards.
Okay, here we go. The Bronze Award goes to Can You See Me for Deloitte by Saboteur. There are 2 silver awards to present here, with the first going to Unstereotype for Unilever by Plastic Pictures and Why Are There So Few Female Artists for National Galleries of Scotland by Hee Haw. And the Gold Award goes to a film which moved our judges. They praised it for its use of innovative techniques and for its compelling effect. The Gold Award goes to Black Lives Matter for HSBC by Media Zoo.
When Black Lives Matter is spoken, it is not to say all other lives do not matter. It is to say that this community of Black people is valued as well.
I think you have to initially start with the acknowledgement that there is a problem. There's been situations where I think my chair has been kicked by someone to get my attention.
A colleague of mine thought that the darker your skin is, the more your skin smells.
There's times where I worked on the executive floor and people thought that I worked in the kitchen.
It just continually reminds you that you are, in some respects, very exceptional. You work in a white world, you don't conform to the stereotypes that many people have of what Black people do, and it's just a constant reminder in your day-to-day life that you are different.
I am a Black male, I will be walking on the street, I'll be dressed in a specific way. So the thought process in my mind is, okay, do I overtly look like a threat?
I must say that I have become used to it almost, and whilst I say it, I realize how sad that is.
The impact of George Floyd's murder, I think, was very shocking. It's not just because you're a Black person in the US that you will react to it. I think many Black people have had experiences around the world where they are treated as second-class citizens. And I think this was just a very stark and extreme reminder of how bad it can be.
My 9-year-old son said to me, "Mummy, I am scared. I don't want anyone to kneel on my neck." No 9-year-old boy, no Black boy should have to live in fear of their lives.
We do have allies within the business, and I would like for us to have more.
There are a few things that we can get better at, one of which is representation. But I do think that talking about ethnicity as one facet of diversity and inclusion overall, I think is a very positive thing we're doing.
Great leaders can really pick up on that empathy, and we do that for our clients all the time. You really have to empathize with the client. You really have to really put your feet in their shoes and say, wow, okay, this product doesn't have the best experience. How can we tweak it?
It's about creating the right type of culture where all groups feel that they can contribute and that everyone moves forward together.
I hope to use my voice to make sure that other voices are heard.
I'm hopeful in some of the initiatives that the bank is taking, and I have to be. I want this to be, an employee's choice of bank as well. And I'm just optimistic. I think that we're gonna do some amazing things.
Claire is now going to join Sarah Cooper, creative co-founder of Plastic Pictures, following their 3rd award of the evening. Congratulations to you all over at Plastic Pictures, and over to you, Claire.
I'm delighted to be here with Sarah Cooper this afternoon, and so that I can congratulate you live on your awards. So you've done the hat trick. You've got a bronze, a silver, and a gold, and well done. A really exciting afternoon for you. So I just wanted to find out about you from you, just sort of some of your working experience over this last year. Because I think what's been important is how you've managed to work through the pandemic, and what you may have done differently, and what you've found to be different in getting the work out, because it's obviously not held you back in any way.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Claire. And firstly, if I can just give a big shout out to the Plastic Pictures team, who I know are all tuned in. It's really their dedication and passion and good humour that's pulled us through and actually resulted in some of the most meaningful work that I think we've ever produced. So from myself and from James, a huge thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
What have we done different? I mean, what's our experience? But everybody's experience has been vastly different. I think we've been very fortunate with our client mix, which is why we've been so busy. But I think for us at the moment, the question is for us not what we've done differently whilst we've been living and working through it, but more about looking forward and to what we'll do differently once we're out of it. And I think the one positive or the main lesson we're taking from the past 18 months is that we should all focus on things that really matter. And right now there's an opportunity for a cultural reset, and there's definitely a responsibility for all of us involved in the media production landscape to make the right choices, positive choices, any time we can, and really use our creativity for change and use our creativity for good and bring new ideas that really move people and change their perceptions and inspire action. That's what we need. And, you know, I think we're in a prime position to help shape that direction via the companies and the brands that we choose to work for, who we hire, the creative ideas that we make together, and then the messages that we share. And, you know, we're so proud to be recognized at the EVCOM Clarion Awards because the Clarions are the most perfect example of championing creative projects that really matter.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for that, and I agree, and I'm really amazed at still how many entries we've had this year, given how difficult it has been for some people. But could I just ask you as well, given that you've done a remarkable amount of work this year for one particular client, how has that relationship developed? And I'm speaking of Unilever. How has that relationship with that client developed over this time, and where do you see it going forward?
Sure. Well, I think, yes, Unilever has been a wonderful client. Their work's always so purposeful, and they always have an authentic intent with it. You know, for us, without a doubt, through the pandemic, we've seen our client relationships strengthen and become more human. Ironically, that shift has been powered by technology. I mean, we're all seeing inside each other's homes, and with that, we're showing empathy and compassion for each other like never before. And as technology keeps on advancing, it's these qualities, empathy and compassion, which are going to be the most valued leadership qualities over the next 10 to 20 years. You know, and I think furthermore, talking about relationship strengthening, it's, you know, we talk about earning client trust, and well, the pandemic has really put trust to the test. Remote operations have really expedited an industry change that in hindsight was sort of long overdue, I think. And, you know, we've proved to our clients over the past 18 months that they can still trust us to deliver. But I think, interestingly, our corporate film industry is in the strongest position to leverage trust, because the trust is not so much on us anymore as suppliers. We've proved that, but on our clients and the stories that they're telling. Can we trust them to not greenwash? You know, and instead have a clear and true purpose and to make bold commitments and tell those stories with a genuine authenticity. I think if you've seen Edelman's latest trust barometer, the study reveals that currently business is the most trusted institution globally. It's not governments, it's not NGOs, it's not the media. So while governments are absent and the media is peddling misinformation, people are expecting business to step in and solve today's challenges. So there's a real heightened demand for CEOs to focus on new areas, for example, guarding information or reimagining how industry works so it's a circular economy, or committing to a fair living wage. So CEOs and their comms teams, who we work with, need to ensure that reliable, trustworthy information goes out to their employees and by extension, the wider external society. So Claire, who is better placed at filling that information void than us? You know, Plastic Pictures or any of the other great production companies that have entered the Clarion Awards. You know, it's us, it's the corporate film communicators who, through our authenticity, our creativity, our production skills, are really changing the way that people perceive big business and how they feel about it and how they kind of go out and behave in the world. So from here, I see it only getting better and stronger, and there being better stories to tell.
Yes, and I think if we can get the Clarion's entries and the message far and wide, you know, businesses can then have something to relate to and influence them in how they put out their messaging, so that they've got great stuff to refer to. So
yeah, you know, they often make a sort of flippant comment about saying how we're helping to change the world with every 2-minute film, or 2 minute 30 seconds, according to Steve Garvey, but with every 2-minute film out there. But on days like this, it feels like that sentiment rings, well, it's more true and more convincing than ever, really. So thanks, Claire, and to all of the EVCOM judges for their precious time in judging all the awards, and for all the positive remarks. I think this is a really great ceremony, and one that I'll continue to support.
Great, thank you so much, and big congratulations to you and your team again for a great result today. Thanks ever so much, Sarah. Cheerio, bye for now. I will now pass you over to Kate to carry on with the awards part. So Kate.
Thank you, Claire. The following award, and our penultimate of today's ceremony, recognises innovation, engaging audiences with social issues in a unique and original way. The shortlisted innovation entries are: A World of Possibilities by Yellowfish, Freedom from Loneliness for Jewish Care by Inspired Films, Isolation by Studio Giggle, Norwood Dinner Reimagined by Verity London, and What One Thing? Rare Disease Day 2021 for the Bedrock Group by Inspired Films. The Bronze Award goes to Freedom from Loneliness for Jewish Care by Inspired Films. The Silver Award goes to Norwood Dinner Reimagined by Verity London. And the Gold Award goes to a piece which one described as a creative film reflecting the emotions we have all experienced over this past year. So the winner is Isolation by Studio Giggle. Beautiful. Our final award, and a fitting one to end on, is for celebratory work. This category includes work that celebrates CSR, health, education, social welfare, diversity and much more. The shortlisted celebratory entries are Every Voice Raised for The Body Shop by Media Zoo, Freedom from Loneliness for Jewish Care by Inspired Films, Living Memory for Unilever by Plastic Pictures, Norwood Dinner Reimagined by Verity London, 1 Million Futures for Deloitte by the Edge Picture Company, Recycle Week 2020 for Recycle Now Wrap by Radley Yeldar, and Social and Community Capital, celebrating organisations with a social purpose by Sequel Group. But before I reveal the winners, Claire is once again going to be joined by Charlotte to talk about how the future looks for the event sector and what opportunities lie ahead.
Welcome back, Charlotte. Nice to see you again.
Thanks, Claire. Thank you for having me back.
So we're just going to talk a little bit about the events sector. And really, I suppose I just wanted to look at, as we start to pull ourselves out of the last 14, 15 months, where do you think the biggest challenges are going to show themselves? What are the big things that might catch us out?
I think what we're seeing certainly at the moment is that the uncertainty around the government guidelines has been probably the biggest challenge over the past year or 15 months. And I don't think that challenge is necessarily going away. So, you know, we've been as a sector totally unsupported really by the government through this whole process, probably more than most sectors, because we've been given very little support really. So I think now we've certainly seen a dramatic uplift in appetite for people wanting to go back to live. I think that's changed anyhow dramatically in terms of what that actually really looks like. However, people can't really commit and sign on the dotted line even for events later on. They want to and they're prepared to, but every time they think that they can, the uncertainty sort of prevails. So I think that that's probably the biggest challenge, and I suspect it's probably going to carry on until Christmas. I think that the upbeat side of that is that the appetite is 100% there, and I think that, you know, the hybrid scenario and solution, it's always been there in the form of TV anyhow, but I think it's 100% here to stay, because the travel, the fact that companies haven't been able to travel, they've saved a huge amount of money as a result, and therefore they're unlikely to want to go back to the same level of travel that they were that they were beforehand. So I think that that's had a very systematic change in the sector overall.
And how do you think event companies are going to adjust to that? I mean, if companies are changing the way they think, and hybrid events will have changed their landscape entirely, how do you think event companies will adjust, and will some not survive?
Well, I think very sadly there's been some casualties anyway over the last 15 months, and there's been a lot of M&A activity within the industry. So I think a lot of companies who felt that they either don't have the appetite to weather the storm have chosen not to, or have been bought up by other bigger businesses. So there's been a massive consolidation in the industry anyhow. You know, unless you really look at maneuvering yourself into a communication space, I think it's very hard to continue as a logistics only agency. And it's something that we looked at pivoting to in 2019 anyhow. Not that I had a crystal ball or anything specifically, but it just, you know, the vehicle for communication, live events is only one of those. And now all agencies really have to take an entirely integrated approach, and many have been for many years. And that's not new, but I think our industry as an events industry has had to really move into that comm space and adapt from a communications perspective, and look at the different routes to market to communicate those messages, and the content being pivotal and being at the heart of that. So I think even now we're having many conversations where most in-house corporate planners don't really understand from what we're experiencing what hybrid actually really means. So we're finding that we're doing a lot of consultancy work to help enlighten people of what this really looks like. because I think a lot of people are calling out for that at the moment.
So my next question was going to be about how the relationship with clients has changed, but to a certain extent you've answered it slightly there about the fact that you're doing it's a lot more of a consultancy process now, where you're discovering what they need as they go along, rather than them telling you what they want and you go away and deliver it kind of thing.
Yes, and I think that our intention has always been to not be involved in the final decision-making process when we're at the end of that decision, if that makes sense. So, we often would receive the brief for the live events piece way after the strategy has actually been discussed and pinned down. And really, we want the conversations to start far earlier with us around what the internal and external communications piece looks like, and to have those sessions with clients where it is very much consultative. And we've spent the last 15 months really being very much that voice and that advisor to our clients, by just having conversations around how the industry is moving and what industry trends look like, and how people need to view the production of their live events. Because one has to bear in mind that the clients that we're talking to, they've also had to adapt dramatically, and they're all largely logistics and events deliverers. So they have had to become communications people as well, which hasn't been comfortable for a lot of people. So, they haven't just been able to sort of go straight to, okay, we're delivering that global partners retreat, in 6 months' time. They've had to think about what that looks like when the Asian community of that partners retreat can't travel, or and what that looks like in a hybrid capacity now. So that's really where we're trying to help, and we're trying to guide, and we're looking at the consultancy area.
Yeah, and then of course all of these changes will have had a big impact on skills and the type of people that you will be recruiting, and what's required to work in the sector.
Yes, of course, and I think there's a double-edged answer to that, which is that there's a piece around upskilling existing very, very good producers that you have who work full time. And looking at the digital marketing piece and the campaign piece that has become very, very important now. And you can't produce a strategy around whether it's a virtual, hybrid or live event, quite frankly, without that piece now. So the communications piece online is absolutely key. We've been doing a lot of brand work. So design has become very much part of what we are involved in producing as well for our clients now, and creating brand design around a lot of the communications pieces is pivotal. So we are that there's a whole different skill set, as you rightly suggest, that needs to be bolted on, so that you're not actually just looking at the delivery and the execution, because quite honestly, that vehicle for execution needs to be considered at the end, not at the beginning of thinking we're just going to go to live or hybrid or whatever. But what is the best means of communication for this piece of activity?
Okay. And then just finally, what would be your key consideration or point, just looking ahead for the next 6 to 12 months? What's your thinking, and where do you think the sector might be going?
I personally feel that the business travel situation is not going to change in a hurry. I think that people have to be very mindful, in the event sector, that the big events that they produced over a period of years are unlikely to come back swiftly. I think domestic events, absolutely 100%. But the world, as far as the pandemic is concerned, everybody's tackling that at different times and speeds, and so therefore that means that even though we might be opening up on the 21st of June completely without wearing masks and social distancing, etc., it doesn't mean that other parts of the world are able to operate in the same way, and indeed are able to travel. I mean, you think one country's on a green list, and then all of a sudden 5 more are put on the red list, and you can't travel anywhere anyway even if you wanted to. So I think all of those things make it very challenging, and it is, after all, the very big global events that really have been the bread and butter for most businesses in this sector. So where do you channel that revenue, and where does it come from? And there is a massive appetite for hybrid. However, a lot of people don't know exactly how to deliver that.
Yeah, so lots of things to think about, and you could take the view that it's either really exciting or really terrifying.
I'd like to take the view that it is very exciting, but unless you're prepared to be very quick moving and take a very advisory approach and continue to build those relationships really strongly, it's very, very challenging. But I think it is an exciting time to be in this sector.
Right, okay. Well, thank you very much, Charlotte. Lovely to see you, and thanks for your input. And we shall now pass back over to Kate for the final award. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you. So the Bronze Award goes to Norwood Dinner Reimagined by Verity London. The Silver Award goes to Recycle Week 2020 for Recycle Now Wrap by Ravli Yeldar. And the Gold Award goes to a film which was fittingly described as upbeat and progressive, a personal approach, which the judges agreed was very engaging. Our final award of the afternoon goes to Every Voice Raised for The Body Shop by Media Zoo.
Examples of situations where I've been discriminated? Well, there's so many.
Racism, it is still here. It makes people feel unequal, unwanted.
Was called fag and gay daily, and it was drilled into me that being the way I was a bad thing.
Through my professional career where I was discriminated against because of my gender.
The current representation of people with disabilities is vastly overlooked, and I think it's because we're forever busy. We're in a bubble, we're busy.
My name's Christine Daly.
I'm Nikki.
David Parry.
Erica Rose.
Natasha Aziz.
I've worked at Body Shop for 28 years.
I don't feel that I am a child of Mississippi, although it is home, because I always felt like an intruder.
I began to have doubts about my sexuality. Working within a small team at the Body Shop was my safe place. They were the first people that I came out to, and they were massively supportive and gave me the strength to be myself in that little hub of our team.
As a beauty brand, I think the Body Shop has a huge role to play
in creating a more diverse and inclusive environment for all people.
We want to be seen for all our differences.
GBS Together is here to driving positive change through the lens of our colleagues and our customers that are LGBTQIA+.
We want everybody that works with us or shops with us to feel safe in the Body Shop office, the Body Shop warehouse, the Body Shop store. We're still on a journey and we've still got more to learn, and we'll only learn more by continuing to be proactive in partnering with organisations outside of the Body Shop who can help us, educate us, who can support us on that journey.
Here's a photo of me with my daughter on her first birthday, which was the first reason that I joined the network.
The more we start to live it as a brand internally, that will naturally change the way we do our jobs and therefore start to filter externally.
You know, I believe in acceptance and belonging and inclusion and celebration of people. You know, not erasing differences, but seeing them and celebrating and honoring all the things that make us, you know, who we are.
Our final award marks the end of today's ceremony. We would like to thank our physical and virtual attendees for joining us today to celebrate true excellence and creativity in the cause-driven sphere. EVCOM will be reaching out to all winners tomorrow to confirm the address to which you'd like your trophy sent, so do look out for that. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you to host today's ceremony, and I'm going to hand back to Claire.
A huge thank you to the brilliant Kate Sturgis for hosting today and for announcing our wonderful winners. I would like to extend another thank you to our brilliant judges and to our sponsors DRPG, Cvent and 5283. The award scheme is all about work that makes a difference, and we intend to go on celebrating this vital and creative work long into the future. Thank you again to our audience and to all of our winners today. Big congratulations from all of us at EVCOM. Thank you and good evening. Bye.